Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my August wrap up. It feels crazy to say that it's already September and it's nearly autumn. I've completed 3 books this month and I am currently in the middle of reading 2 books. There are other books that I started reading, some of them more than a year ago, but we won't talk about those here until I've actually finished them. First book I finished reading in August was volume 3 of The Sandman, and that is Dream Country. I really enjoyed this. I think I read it in one sitting, and there's some really cool little stories in this. And interestingly, this is like an immediate segue into television. There was obviously The Sandman came out in August and I watched it. I'll talk about it more in detail later. But then towards the end of the month, they released a bonus episode, and 2 of the stories are actually from the 3rd volume, which I thought was really cool. And quite nice that I'd already read them without necessarily knowing that I needed to read into volume 3 before the first season came out. My 2 favourite stories in this were actually the ones that were in the bonus episodes. That was A Dream of a Thousand Cats and Calliope, or Calliope. I can't pronounce now. I can't pronounce any word. I can't pronounce names. But yeah, I love how this tells stories. Neil Gaiman has weaved a very interesting and just dynamic universe with The Sandman. And every story is about the beauty of storytelling and about hope, dreams and all that kind of stuff. And I just think it's beautiful. They're just, I don't know, it really is a love letter to stories, this whole comic book series, and I'm realising that more and more as I delve into it, that it's just a love of storytelling and how it's innate in our nature to be weavers of tales. The very fact that we dream just presents that fact to us, that we're dreaming of impossibilities and narratives that will never happen to us, and some that perhaps will. It's very strange when you have a very hyper real dream that feels like it was a day that you've already lived or something. I don't know what I'm talking about, but yeah, it's really enjoyable. I'm falling deeper and deeper in love with it. I've now got the next 3 issues, so that's 4, 5 and 6. Can't do simple maths either. So no doubt I'll probably actually get through all 3 of those in September, so get ready for a Sandman Fest in the September wrap up. The next book I finished reading was J.G. Ballard's Crash. This is an interesting read. It's very bizarre, very gross, very, I don't know, it's not for the faint of heart. And yeah, maybe I'm a bit weird for reading this. It's about a group of people who start becoming obsessed with car crashes. The main character, forgotten his name. His name's Ballard, but I've forgotten his first name, which is weird because he's the narrator of this. J.G. Ballard himself, is it what is the thing where an author supplants themselves into the story? That's a bit weird. This guy has a car crash, and during the car crash someone is killed, and then he starts becoming obsessed with car crashes and the sexual energy of them, and then he meets some other nut jobs basically. One of them is a TV presenter, or he used to be a TV presenter, but then he got scarred up from car crashes, so then he doesn't do that anymore. That just kind of tells you about the view of media in this, and the fact that probably that would happen in real life. A lot of people were shunned from public facing media because they don't look a certain way and they don't behave a certain way. But yeah, these people just become obsessed with the violence of a car crash, the adrenaline rush of having a close encounter with death. This also then translates into an erotic energy, and then the 2 become intertwined. So the car, the motor vehicle and sex become one, so that they can't do it without it. I don't really know how to describe this without sounding like a weirdo. But yeah, it's just very bizarre. I was going to do a book versus movie review of this, but I don't really know what to say. I enjoyed reading the book to a certain extent, and I think the movie is a brilliant adaptation of this, and I think Ballard himself actually said when the movie came out that it was actually better than his book, because Cronenberg got the themes across perhaps better than he did. And I think some of the changes were better in the movie. Like the obsession with Elizabeth Taylor, that's why she's on this really disgusting front cover, wasn't in the movie, and I think it was better for it. And then it was also, this takes place in, I think, Surrey / the outskirts of London. No, Surrey, because it's near a film studio. Whereas the Cronenberg movie takes place in Canada, in Toronto, I believe. But yeah, so there is quite a few differences, but then there's also like dialogue lifted straight from the page. Because I'd seen the movie before I'd finished reading the book, I think I was like halfway through the book when I watched the movie. It's very interesting to be reading it and then see literally a whole line of dialogue that was translated onto screen. But yeah, I think they're both very interesting pieces of art, if you will. Like, it's a deep dive into a bizarre psychology, and I think it's always interesting to read stuff like that. There is a line in this book, I mean, weirdly, the wife of Ballard in this is called Catherine, so that was just surreal for me, the fact that there was this woman with my name in it. And then there's a line, where is it? Oh yeah, here it is. Catherine had a natural and healthy curiosity for the perverse in all its forms. I feel a bit like called out by that, because I read the weirdest books, I watch the weirdest movies. Am I perverse? I don't know, aren't we all? But there's like scenes in the book and in the movie where a car crash has happened and there's just crowds of people around staring, and it's like we try and pretend that we're not completely, I don't know, like enthralled by seeing death happen, whereas these people like completely own the perverseness of watching people die and seeing the destruction of a car crash. But yeah, like, I perhaps wouldn't recommend this to everyone because it is quite weird, but if you're interested in fucked up books, then you probably should read this and watch the movie. Then the final book that I finished in August was Akwaeke, Emezi's You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty. This is like the first romance book in a very long time, if ever, that I've actually really enjoyed and felt like it was, I don't know, like a very interesting and important read. Perhaps one of the main reasons is because Emezi writes beautifully. Their prose is just powerful and rich in detail and meaning. Like, some of the sentences in this drip with beauty and like a sort of brilliance. I loved it. I read this quite quickly, and I also enjoyed the story. Like, romance stories are normally filled with cliches. Yeah, like there's a love triangle in this, but it's very different. I thought it was really refreshing how it was handled, how there is tragedy in this, how there are LGBTQ characters that aren't sort of used shittily, like they are who they are, and it doesn't force them into tragedy or discrimination. They just exist the way they are, and it's beautiful. And yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I would totally recommend it to anyone who, I don't know, like, I mean, if you like romance, then this is brilliant. If you've never read a romance, or you, like me, have kind of felt them a bit lackluster, this really was a brilliant read. The story essentially focuses on a black American artist who, I don't think this is a spoiler because it's pretty much like from the opening pages we know of this, but her husband died in a car crash. and so she sort of cornered herself off from the possibility of romance for about 5 years. And this is just her sort of opening her heart up again and falling back in love with love and learning to trust and be at one with herself and another. But yeah, I don't want to say any more because I think it's a book to be discovered and devoured. Loved it. Then the other 2 books that I'm currently reading, we have The Rings of Saturn by W.G. Siebold. This is a non-fiction book about the German author who undertook a walk-in holiday in August of 1992 along the Suffolk coastline. It's basically him just walking, observing, and then musing on just things that randomly pop into his head. And it sounds like it might be enjoyable to like the older generations or like people that, I don't know, like non-fiction. I don't really read non-fiction and I'm under 30, but this old man walking along the Suffolk coast is really enthralling. I don't know why, I don't know how, I'm that much into it, and I really am quite into it. I think it's the idea of when you walk, you think, and sometimes when I walk, I think of just so many different things. Ideas come into my head for like stories or work things and stuff like that. And so it's just sort of the inspiration from walking and observing the environment around you. So again, it's another sort of love letter to writing, because walking can act as a stimulus to ideas and narrative exploration. I haven't finished it, so I can't speak for the rest of the book, but I think it's going to be just as interesting. One of the main reasons why I discovered this book was because last year I had this binge watching of a German filmmaker called Christian Petzold, and there was a retrospective of quite a lot of his work on Mubi, and there was a scene in one of his films which is Barbara. It was set during the Cold War, so it was like East and Western Germany, and it was about this woman who was going to be fleeing from East Germany to West Germany, and she has a conversation with someone, with, I think it's a co-worker of hers, and they talk about a painting, which technically and is actually inspired by a passage in this book. So there's actually pictures in this, but they have a conversation about the anatomical accuracy of Rembrandt's painting, you know, the one where he's like dissecting a hand. And yeah, so that dialogue around that is lifted from this book, and so then from that movie I discovered this book, and I just love it when things like that happen, like when you're watching something or you're reading something and then you discover something else through it, and just how mind-opening, don't know whether that's the right turn of phrase, literature, movies, art can be. Like, for example, I discovered an artist through a Korean book. So it was I Have the Right to Destroy Myself, and then in that they talk about a video artist in it, and then not that long ago I went to an exhibition that was of that video artist. So it's just strange how things all connect. But yeah, I'm really enjoying reading this. And then the other book that I'm currently reading and very close to finishing is The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm currently in the last section, which is Akwaeke. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It says it there, you probably can't see it. Akwaeke. So I'm on the chapter The Downfall of Numenor. And then there's one other chapter which is of the Rings of Power, which is interesting because I'm getting to this just as the new Amazon TV show is coming to our screens. It actually premiered last night and I watched the first 2 episodes. First thoughts are, I don't know yet. It looks beautiful and some of it is quite cool, like Khazad-dûm looks phenomenal. But then some of the characters I'm not enthralled by, like I'm not really enamoured by Galadriel, yeah. I think some of the writing is a bit stilted, and actually, weirdly, I'm more interested in the characters that don't exist in Tolkien at the moment. Like, I think the story of Arondir and Bronwyn is quite interesting at the moment. Anyway, we won't talk about the Rings of Power because it's technically a September thing, so it's just interesting the fact that I'm getting to the bits that will be in this show just as the show is airing. And yeah, this is epic. There are so many names you need to remember. Luckily there is a family tree, but I did start getting confused with like Húrin, Túrin, all of those people, all the bloody sons of Feanor everywhere being ridiculous about the Silmarils. I loved Beren and Luthien. I think that's one of my favourite parts of this so far, because it is a romance between an elf and a human, and the fact that it mirrors Aragorn and Arwen in Lord of the Rings, it's just beautiful. Like, I love it when narratives do that. So far that's been my favourite part. I'll let you know how I get on, because I will finish this soon because I need to, and I really love it. And I know that most of this isn't going to sink in with the first read, so I'll probably reread this again and again and again, and then everything will make sense. It's the kind of thing that, this is going to sound pretentious, but to honour the material, it needs rereads, just because it's so packed with mythology, with detail, names of places, people and things, that it's quite overwhelming. I was handling it quite well towards the beginning, but then it just kind of got very name heavy. But also I think it's quite interesting how you can see the inspirations in this. So like for the first chapter, I think that's the Quenta Silmarillion. Is that what it's called? I can't pronounce this. The Ainulindale. That section felt very much like prose Edda, poetic Edda, with the establishing of the mythology of the gods, the Valinor, the Ainur and things like that. Morgoth is quite reminiscent, in my opinion, of Loki, of how he tricks people, then he promises to be good again, then he starts screwing everyone over again, so that felt very sort of Norse mythology. There is then, is it Húrin? Who's the guy that Tur? I think it's Tur, who kills a dragon. Glamrung or something like that. And that feels very reminiscent of Beowulf. But then there's also elements of Oedipus in here as well. Then I believe there's also a Finnish myth that I haven't read yet that inspired that story as well. I just love how there's inspirations, but then it feels wholly new as well. But then the fact that everyone's like, Tolkien is a genius, this is so inventive, but it's using old stories to weave a new tale. But yes, I'm going to use this as a segue into television, mainly because I haven't finished reading it, because I became addicted to a couple of Nordic Noir shows. They're both Swedish, and they're both on Walter Presents on Channel 4, like all four, whatever the streaming service is. First one is, I think it's Innan vi dör, Before We Die. It's about the police and like a gang and then some corrupt police, and this woman's son starts infiltrating this gang, and it is full of twists and turns, and literally in some of the episodes by the end I was like, oh my fucking god, what is happening? Why have they done that? What? I pretty much binge watched that. I had like 2 weeks holiday from work this month, and most of it I spent, well, not most of it, I spent an unhealthy amount of time watching TV, because it's the kind of show where you're like, oh my god, there's a twist, next episode, oh my god, there's a twist, next episode. But yeah, it's so good. The next show I watched was Stockholm Requiem, which is based on a series of books by someone, I've forgotten their name, I'll insert it here. That was also really good. And I feel like I kind of want to read the books, but then I already know the ends, and then there's not really any point. But it was really atmospheric, dark, brooding, sinister, and the characters were interesting as well, and it kind of follows them doing like a case every 2 episodes, and then there's like time that passes in between, which kind of is a very interesting way of formatting the show. And yeah, it was really good. And interestingly, it had the same actor from the previous show who played one of like the gang leader. What's the guy's name? Alexei Manvelov or something, and he's really good. Like, he plays a gang leader who's really sinister, really kind of dark, but very fascinating. And then he plays a police officer who has like demons, like as all Nordic Noir police officers have. Like, there's no such thing as like a TV drama about a normal police officer. They're always like haunted by something or have a chip on their shoulder. It's what makes the characters fascinating. But yeah, no, I really recommend those shows if you are into creepy murder stuff. Other main TV show that I watched was The Sandman, of course. I think the show has been beautifully realised. It feels very epic, sweeping, poetic, and just magical. I love the characterisation, like Dream / Morpheus / whatever else is called. It's played by Tom Sturridge to perfection. Like, he's like a little emo sad boy, and he's kind of cute as well, so it's just like, oh, poor Morpheus. Death is beautifully realised, but yeah, it's just sensational. I loved it, and I'm utterly having my fingers crossed for a season 2 and beyond. Like, I think they just have to do the whole thing, because Neil Gaiman has created something so special here. I want more. I binge watched it. I watched it too fast, and I need more. Please, Netflix. Oh, House of the Dragon. First 2 episodes so far have aired. Love it. It's very dark. There were some horrible scenes in episode 1. I think the most fascinating character at the moment is Daemon Targaryen. And I also think, Rhaenyra she's my new favourite character in the show. Like, I think she is going to be very interesting. Yeah, so I'm really enjoying that so far. And let's talk about movies, because I watched lots of movies in this month. Let's go to my diary on Letterboxd. The first movie we have is The Love Witch. It's a modern movie made to look like it's from the 60s and 70s. So, like, there's a grainy quality to the footage. It's in, like, Technicolor. The costumes, the makeup, the set design is just fabulous. The story does go on for a bit too long. Like, I think the third act should have been condensed a bit, but it was really enjoyable. I loved the visuals were a masterpiece in my opinion. Like, it just looks so cool, and the vibe is just sensational. Loved it. Then I watched Summer with Monica, which is by Ingmar Bergman. Last month I swear I said, oh, I can't find anywhere to watch an Ingmar Bergman movie. Turns out there's quite a few on BFI Player, so I'm slowly making my way through them. I thought this was going to be like a cute summer romance, but it's Bergman, should have known. It basically starts off quite sweet, about 2 young people escaping from Stockholm onto the archipelago of islands, and just sort of living almost as if they're in like a storybook. So they've abandoned society, of like working, of having a job, having responsibilities, and they just sail off onto some islands, do a bit of island hopping, live off of the land, so like just foraging for food, dancing, and just all around having quite a nice summer. But then the female gets pregnant, and then doom and gloom hits. So it's like just a poster child for not having a kid. Yeah, like the narrative kind of reminds me of the moment in Mean Girls, or insert it here, but instead of the people dying, it's the romance that dies. But yeah, like, it's beautifully shot. Like, there's some gorgeous visuals. It's all shot in black and white, but like, I want to have a summer in Sweden right now, but summer is over, so it's been a weird summer, hasn't it? Oh, like, so intense and then normal. But yes, global warming is a thing. Oh, I rewatched The Worst Person in the World. Brilliant movie. Watch it, please. Nope. What the devil? That was weird. Kind of not what I expected it to turn into. But I really enjoyed it, and I thought there was a brilliant commentary on people, like the idea of trauma and sort of, I don't know, being obsessed with capturing the moment, very weirdly realised by some of the characters in this. But it's all about the idea of something so bizarre, so out of this world, and being obsessed with trying to prove that it happened. And there's commentary on media consumption, of sensationalism. I could go on, but Jordan Peele is knocking it out the park. I'm a sucker for anything sci-fi, as we all know, so I really liked it. Oh my god, dog visitor. Hello? Can I say something into the microphone? This is Eddie. Eddie! Ouch! Careful. Here you go. Where was I? Oh yeah, I was talking about Nope. Brilliant. Go and see it. Then the next movie I went to see is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I saw this at an advanced screening at Cineworld. One of the main reasons why I went to see the movie is because it's got Lee Pace in it, and he's brilliant. And it's also got Rachel Sennott from Shiva Baby in it. It feels very much like your typical slasher horror movie, but there is a clever twist at the end, and it makes you think. It's kind of like judging people for their... What are you doing? God's sake, this dog. Yeah, so I thought it was quite good. I don't know, like, I feel like I find it really hard to do these wrap-ups because I've now forgotten what most of the stuff is about, and like the intricacies of what it's about. Like, it was commenting on like social media obsession, toxic relationships and friendships, paranoia, stuff like that. And then to finish off the month, I went to see the Lord of the Rings trilogy in cinemas because they re-released it in IMAX, obviously to cash in on the new TV show. And by Jove, am I glad they did, because it was the first time I've ever seen one of my favourite trilogies of films ever that I've been obsessed with since I was a kid. First time I saw it on big screen, and alas, it was the theatrical version, so there are narrative gaps galore. I've forgotten how we're spoilt with the extended editions because it just fleshes out the story in a much smoother way, whereas Return of the King is very patchy because of narrative cuts. But yeah, it was still magical to see on the big screen. I cried so much. I cried at Boromir's death. I've never done that before. I found it really emotional. Maybe it was because it was just massive in front of me and I was just feeling emotional anyway. I don't think I cried at the Two Towers, but of course, Return of the King, literally the last hour of the movie just makes me weep. I cried at the bit where Rohan arrives at Minas Tirith. Like, I cried when they started charging down there. I don't know why. I just was feeling... I think it was because the previous scene was like Sam crying into Frodo because he thinks he's dead. And so I was already a bit choked up. And then just seeing the majesty of the Rohirrim charging into battle, I just was like... Whoa. I cried when Theoden died. I cried when Éowyn stabbed the Witch King because it was just like, I am no man. Stab. One of the most powerful moments for me as a child, seeing a woman be like, I am no man, and just be so fucking badass. Love Éowyn. Then just cried literally at everything. The credits roll. Oh my god, it's beautiful. I love it so much. And that is the end of my wrap up because I don't know what else to say. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you've been reading and watching in August, and I guess subscribe if you want more of this stuff. And I will see you again soon. Bye bye.